Alright, I'm watching this damn thing. You would not believe the camera bullshit that I've had to put up with in the last 24 hours. First of all, my camcorder broke and I had to replace it, which means that everything is probably off center, tilted, and crap like that. And I just shot 2 videos this morning, or today, that were probably brilliant and hilarious and all this. And then I didn't have freaking memory card in the camera. So I turned off the camera and it said, "You're going to lose all your data." And, well, there's nothing I can do about it at that point. But here we go. One of the videos that I made, again, this was lost forever. And it was probably way better than this video is going to be. But you got to deal with what you got to deal with, I guess. I'm pretty sure that everybody that has like something that is like a skills type of a thing, plane pro, for example, whatever, horseshoes, body work on a car, whatever. Anybody that has something that takes a little bit of a skill, if they see somebody doing it a different way, doing something differently, then they'll go, "Well, that's weird. That person is weird." And I know pro players are like that. I know I'm definitely like that. Even though I have all these different idiosyncrasies and such, if I see somebody doing something that I don't do, like, I can't be wrong. They have to be wrong. They're the weirdo, not me, damn it. Anyway, so this is going to be a video about weirdos and weird things. There are going to be a couple of like honorable mentions, but I have 3 main things that I want to touch on. These are not in any particular order, I guess. Just things that I've noticed about some really good players. They do some things that, again, weird. So the first thing I want to talk about, this is pretty common, especially it seems like amongst the really top players, is the wrist people. The people that are hitting the ball and they're using their wrist for the last couple of inches of shooting. Now, 3 of my absolute favorite players are Alex and Francisco and Tony Chohan, and all 3 of them are doing that. There's a heck of a lot more players that are doing that too. Again, really pretty good players, at least the ones that I noticed, are doing this wrist thing. The time when I've messed with it, I found that my wrist, when I put my wrist into the stroke, my tip jerks that way, that last couple of inches, just a little bit. It jerks to the right, which makes me miss more often than not, or makes me put accent or right English on a shot more often than not. That's fine. It's probably something I could get used to. But the question I always have to ask is, why? What does the wrist do? Why do people do it? I don't think they all do it just because that's the way they learn to do it. Their dad taught them or whatever. I don't think they all do it because they think it looks cool. I have heard that some people do it because they can get that little extra speed on the cue ball without having to move their bigger muscles as quickly. Okay. I've also heard that it can do something to like the timing of the stroke and give you a better stroke against the cue ball by doing that. I don't know if that's true or not, but there they are, and there are an awful lot of players that do it. They can't all be wrong, but in my mind, they can all be weird. So that's what I'm going to call them. Oops. Another thing I want to talk about, another thing, not the other thing I want to talk about. Are the people that, well, shit, I'm trying to think. There's only one guy I can think of that does this. I know there's going to be more. I know this used to be much more common back in the day, like the pre-Simonis days. They're playing on a really slow clock. And what I'm talking about is a slip stroke. The only player that I can think of right now that does this is Josh Roberts. And just so you know what I'm talking about when I say what Josh Roberts does, is he's just going to shoot this 11 in there. He will put his hand someplace. Actually, Josh is really muscular, so he's more like this because all of his muscles are in the way. He's got a really open stance, is what I'm saying. And then when he pulls back that final time, his stick will stop at a certain point, but then his right hand will keep going. And then he'll shoot, and that's his slip stroke. That's got to be affecting the timing of the stroke and giving him a better stroke. I have a hard time making a ball doing that, but Josh is very accurate. At times, when he's on, he's as accurate as anybody with the slip stroke thing. I'm not really a friend of Josh. We played one time at Derby. He might know my name, but I certainly don't know him well enough to go, "Hey Josh, why are you such a weirdo? Why are you doing this weird thing?" And I wasn't going to ask him that in the middle of our match either, certainly. Kind of the same thing with all of these wrist people. Although I should have asked Tony Chohan, because Tony's kind of a friend of mine. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? I just didn't think about it at the time. Why is what? See, I could learn how to do this slip stroke thing. I'll get used to it, play with it for a while. I could probably learn how to do it. But why? With the effort needed to, get used to it and all that, would it be worth it? What would I get out of it? And I don't think there's anything I could get out of that. But someone that uses it and can tell me why, maybe they can convince me differently. Because I do like trying different shit. It's fun for me. It always seems to me, when I move my hand back on that last stroke, that I may as well just do that at the cue ball. It really just seemed like that. Maybe that's the point. To doubt it. That's the point. So another thing I want to talk about, and I only know 2 players that do this. There are probably more. But I'm talking about Francisco and Rob Sias. They will both, for Francisco, 99.902463% of the time, he will line up his shots at bottom left. When he's doing his practice strokes, of course, he's really flamboyant. He's another one that's got the wrist thing going on. But with bottom left. And then on his actual shot, he hit the ball wherever he really wanted to hit it. I've heard 2 reasons as to why Francisco does this. I guess Rob Sias does it as well. But I was having a conversation about Francisco. Was that it helps him to continue to see the shot line, or to see the shot line without the cue being in the way. The cue's up, off here at the bottom left, so you can see the shot line between the cue ball and the object ball better. I've heard that. I guess maybe that kind of half-assed maybe makes sense. And the other reason was, remember, I don't know, a minute or 5 years ago, whatever, I talked about the wrist thing. For me, as a right-handed player, the way my wrist is built, if I try to put my wrist into a shot, my tip goes to the right just a little bit. So maybe, just maybe, somebody like Francisco who has the wrist thing going, maybe he has the same problem. Maybe his tip veers to the right if he puts his wrist into a shot. So he aims to the left. But then he's putting his wrist into it, which is making the tip jump to the right. Just a thought, and I don't know. And I'm not friends with Francisco. And so it's not like I can ask him. why are you so weird, without sounding like I'm, you know, putting him down or whatever. You can even ask him much more politely, Mr. Bustamante, could you please tell me why you aim to the bottom left on all of your shots? But even that sounds like that sounds like I'm being a little bit patronizing. But it still sounds like I could be trying to shark him or whatever. That's absolutely not what I'm trying to do. So for me, those three things are the ones that I noticed almost immediately right off the bat. The wrist thing, the slip stroke, the aiming at a weird part of the ball. Oh, Truman Hogue, he's a very well-known banker here in the Louisville area. He will do all his practice strokes up here at 12 o'clock. Actually, not even 12 o'clock on the cue ball. 12 o'clock up here in the air above the cue ball. And then on his last stroke, he will hit the cue ball in the correct place. Now, I have asked Truman about this, and he does it because back in the day, as a gambler and all that, he didn't want people to see what English he was putting on the ball. So he was doing it, well, for that reason, not because it helped his stroke or whatever, because he was trying to hide his English. So those are the things, aiming in the wrong place until the final stroke, doing a slip stroke, putting a wrist in. I could learn these things, but my question is kind of why? What good would they do me if I were to learn these things? Don't know. Everybody's got something, and I have a bunch of little oddities about me. There's only a few players I can think of that don't really have any, that are like, almost like textbook perfect, Filler is one of them. He's almost textbook perfect. Federer Gorst is another one. Dennis. Almost textbook perfect. And you can't watch any of those three people shoot and go, well, they had that really weird thing that they do. No, none of them have a weird thing they do, except make every damn ball that they shoot at, which I guess could be considered weird in some circles. Headers Vaughn with it. Anyway, so I want to do just a couple of honorable mentions. Although right at this particular second, I can only think of one. I'm sure I'll think of the other one before too long. I made a video once about left-handed players. To me, have often just seemed really, really smooth. No matter how cool I think I look like this, if you reverse the camera and I'm shooting like this, but it's anyway, it just looks better to me. But there have always been some people that to me it just didn't look right. They're shooting left-handed, but it looked like they're just something a little bit off. And I never really knew what it was. Never really cared at that time. But so back at the dawn of time, when I was first learning how to play pool, there was a player, Mike Siegel. A lot of you people probably heard of him. Certainly hope so. Hall of Famer, and was an absolute monster player, 70s and 80s at least. Plays left-handed. But there was always something, me watching, that just looked a little bit odd. He didn't look as smooth as some of the other left-handed players I've seen. He just didn't look as smooth. I've since found out that Mike, while he shoots left-handed, is right-handed. Okay, so he, I guess, decided that right-handed means that's where you control the tip end of the cue, and this arm is just to move the cue back and forth. I've since found out there are several players like that. Several of the top left-handed pool players aren't really left-handed. I've heard that Shannon Dalton is one of those people. I thought Shannon's whole stance and everything just looked a tad awkward. I love Shannon. I have all the respect in the world for all these players, but they're just things that look a little bit awkward. Scott Frost is another one I've heard about. Now, I've also heard the same thing about Jason Shaw. Jason Shaw is as smooth as hell. And when I heard that he is an actual right-handed player, right-handed person who happens to shoot left-handed, I'm not sure I believed it. I'm not sure I believe it now. Again, he's not a friend of mine, so I can't ask him. And I certainly never want people to think that I'm making fun of him or calling him out or trying to shark him in any way, because I'm really not. Those people that shoot with the wrong hand, the wrong hand, to me, I would kind of count that as weird, because there was just always something about that, watching that. What in the world? Oh, they're really right-handed. Okay, now I get it. Well, I said I had a couple of honorable mentions. And unless I think of the other before I get to the camera, then you guys, or get to the remote, then you guys get a review. Hey, I thought of it. It's only been like 30 seconds. And this isn't very much. It's just another thing I've noticed. I've actually talked about this before. I believe truly in my heart that most pro players start with the elbow and finish with the shoulder. Their elbow closes and then their shoulder goes. There are some pro players who are almost all elbow. And we'll go back fucking Dennis again. Almost all elbow. There are some pro players that are particularly like flamboyant in their play, like Francisco, where there's so many things moving, you can't even tell. So just he's not even double jointed. He's got to be like triple jointed the way he gets everything going. But the thing that I want to talk about, the other thing that to me strikes me as weird, is people that lead with the shoulder. Now I can only think of two people. There are probably more. Just like everything else, there's probably more. Mike Davis Jr. and the other person is a guy named Doc at my local pool hall. And those two people lead with the shoulder. And what that means is instead of bending the elbow, closing the elbow, and then following through, like I think most players do, it's leading with the shoulder, and all the elbow ever does is straighten out. Does that make sense? That's all the elbow ever does. Mike Davis Jr. is a very good player. This guy Doc and my pool hall is a very good player. And they're leading with the shoulder. It took a long time for me to figure out what the heck they're doing. Especially this guy Doc. What is he doing? I thought maybe he got injured or something and something weird was going on. I thought he was sidearmed for a while. No, it wasn't any of that. He was just leading with the shoulder. And it turns out he knows and was mentored quite a bit by Mike Davis Jr., so it kind of makes sense. To me, that looks weird. I've messed with that particular thing quite a bit. It's one of those things that's fun for me to do, and I seem to be pretty accurate. Using the big muscles, the shoulder muscles, as opposed to the elbow muscle first. It just doesn't last. Nothing ever lasts with me. But anyway, that's the second honorable mention and the last one for this video. Bye, guys.